I think most people expect a voice or something audible or something they can put a concrete thing that this is God, but I find that God speaks to me in the most crazy ways, through a trip in a car and a road sign. I've had him speak to me and answer prayers, through people, dogs, impressions. I don't think that I could probably count on one hand the times I've heard God's voice audibly, but yet I hear him audibly all the time through the thoughts, impressions, smells, words from people, the Bible. I think that's the problem, is we have limited God to such a narrow confines that we miss his voice that is in the midst of many things that, I don't even know how to say it. I just really don't know how to say it. We ask God a question, but we already have an expectation of how he will answer, and therefore we can't hear him giving us a thought or an impression or a word or however it is that he wants to bring the answer to us. So for me, it's the confining of God to any specific deal that causes me to miss him.
Mm-hmm. Well, I know you teach intimacy all over the world. If somebody said to you, please teach me how to be intimate with God and how to hear his voice, what advice would you give them?
How do you love your best friend? That's the way I teach it a lot, is I tell them, how do you love your wife? How do you, that person that you're closest to, how do you treat them? How do you talk to them? How did you become best friends with them? You do things with them, you talk with them, you hear their points of view, most importantly, it has to do with doing and going. I can sit with people and eat a meal with them forever, or sit and listen to somebody in a confined space forever and never really know them. So I know what Jesus likes to do, and I know what he's about, so I go do that with him. And as I go doing what he loves to do, I find him. I find that intimacy. I find his voice. I find his presence. The miracles that most people in the Western culture are looking for are tied up in the intimacy with God and in their obedience to that intimacy. I found that. I was looking for the miraculous, but found if I just went and searched out God, the miraculous was impossible to avoid.
That's neat. That's neat. I know I've heard you say, why wouldn't your thoughts be God? Yeah. Expand on that.
We ask God a question, and we get this immediate thought in our mind. And immediately there comes a second thought, and we go, that can't be God. Oh, no, that doesn't make sense. Oh, I could never say that. Or that just, I got to bring my mind into control, or whatever. We have these things where we've been taught to ignore this impression or thought or feeling that comes to us instantly after we've spoke to God. And I ask people, and I ask myself, why wouldn't that be God? Who did I just ask? So then, as a good father, would God allow the devil to come and speak to me first? So then I should expect that the first thing, or that first impression, or that first thought to be God, because I just talked to him. I just asked him a question. So I changed in my heart the question from how could this be God to why wouldn't it be God? The doubt that comes instantly after a thought, a picture, whatever that first thing is, that doubt never exists until there's a truth. So the doubt itself, I could never say that. That can't be God. No, that's ridiculous. How could I think that? Those things prove that you've heard something, and that something you've heard is the truth, because doubt itself cannot exist without a truth. In Luke, or in Matthew 7 through 11, as the scriptures ask, seek, and knock, and the answers, and then he gives us a couple scriptures that says, if you, being evil or carnal, know how to give good gifts to your kids, how much more will Father give good gifts to his kids? In a sense, he's saying, If we put that in parallel with a good father, if a son comes and asks for a piece of bread, the father's not going to go out and get a stone, put in the bread, and feed it to his kid to break his teeth or choke him. So what God is saying is, if you ask me a question, and I walk to the door and say, devil, you come in here and answer this question, and in a month or so I'll give them the real answer, is just a ludicrous thought. So then if you bring this to a realization of a good father, when you ask God a question, there has to be an answer from God. Now, my son comes and asks me for an ice cream cone, and I've just paid all my bills and I don't have money for an ice cream cone, but I still speak to my son and go, son, the next time I get paid in 2 weeks, we'll go get an ice cream cone. But if he comes and asks me for an ice cream cone and I just look at him and turn and walk away, 2 weeks later I come back and say, here's your ice cream cone, he doesn't even remember asking for it. But if I tell him, in 2 weeks you'll get your ice cream cone when I get paid, he lives in expectation of that promise. So in the same sense with God, we ask God a lot of hard questions, and sometimes the answer is way off, but God will speak to us when we answer the question that gives us the faith and the courage to have an expectation of the answer.
Awesome. Thank you.
You're welcome.